Hey crew, it's Bid, and I'm back with some more esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Mr. Rudolph Steiner. This is an outline of occult science. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link for my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of an outline of occult science with Chapter 1. The Character of Occult Science. At the present time, the words occult science are apt to arouse the most varied feelings. Some people, they work like a magic charm, like the announcement of something to which they feel attracted by the innermost powers of their soul. To others, there is in the words something repellent, calling forth contempt, derision, or a compassionate smile. By many, occult science is looked upon as a lofty goal of human effort, the crown of all other knowledge and cognition. Others, who are devoting themselves with the greatest earnestness and noble love of truth to that which appears to them true science, deem occult science mere idle dreaming and fantasy, in the same category with what is called superstition. To some, occult science is like a light without which life would be valueless. To others, it represents a spiritual danger, calculated to lead astray immature minds and weak souls, while between these two extremes is to be found every possible intermediate shade of opinion. Strange feelings are awakened in one who has attained a certain impartiality of judgment in regard to occult science, its adherents and its opponents. When one sees how people, undoubtedly possessed of a genuine feeling for freedom in many matters, become intolerant when they meet with this particular line of thought, and an unprejudiced observer will scarcely fail in this case to admit that what attracts many adherents of occult science, or occultism, is nothing but the fatal craving for what is unknown and mysterious, or even vague. That is true, right? If you are only looking for the mysterious and the vague, however, you are doing it with the wrong motivations, and you will wind up in a bind. Right? You will wind up in a situation. Motivations play an immense part in what you do in a magical setting. See the 8 laws of creation. And so, while you should be seeking self-mastery, that is a good thing. You can even be seeking manifestation within certain bounds. To seek it out just because it is mysterious is probably going to have you misaligned the wrong way. Back to the text. And he will also be ready to own that there is much cogency in the reasons put forward against what is fantastic and visionary by serious opponents of the cause in question. In fact, one who studies occult science will do well not to lose sight of the fact that the impulse towards the mysterious leads many a people on a vain chase after worthless and dangerous will-o'-wisps. That is true. Even though the occult scientist keeps a watchful eye on all errors and vagaries on the part of adherents of his views, and on all justifiable antagonism, yet there are reasons which hold him back from the immediate defense of his own efforts and aspirations. These reasons will become apparent to anyone entering more deeply into occult science. It would therefore be superfluous to discuss them here. If they were cited before the threshold of this science had been crossed, they would not suffice to convince one who, held back by irresistible repugnance, refuses to cross that threshold. But to one who effects an entry, the reasons will soon manifest themselves with unmistakable clearness from within. That is true as well. This much, however, implies that the reasons in question point to a certain attitude as the only right one for an occult scientist. He avoids, as much as he possibly can, any kind of outer defense or conflict unless the cause speak for itself. He simply puts forward occult science and in what it has to say about various matters. He shows how his knowledge is related to other departments of life and science, what antagonism it may encounter, and in what way reality stands witness to the truth of his cognitions. Alright, so this is why I speak so often on what I have done, right? We talked about it an awful lot in the introduction, so I'm not going to go into too much extensive detail here, but I have healed myself, right? And part of what I do over here is to help separate things that I know work from things that I think might work and things that I know won't work. He shows his knowledge is related to other departments of life and science. So when we talk about transmutation, for instance, like we did yesterday, and then all of a sudden one of the bigger channels out there put out a video about it, even though the discovery is somewhat old, right? We talked about the scientific advancements where they did transmutations. Well, it turns out that they've done it 3 times. They did it with mercury first. They did it the second time with bismuth, and yes, the third time they used lead. All of them have been transformed into gold. All 3 of them. None of them to a significant benefit. There is more cost that goes into them than you pull out. But that is one of the things that I relay, right? That occult science is about transmutation into gold. And this is a literal way that it has happened. And so I bring it in. I don't try to defend what I talk about. I tell you quite plainly, this is what I have learned. Here is how I have learned it. Here's the resources that I use to learn it. They are generally linked in the box down below. And then we discuss things about it, right? I don't defend it. I just state it. When I talk about the Bible, I'm not here trying to defend the fact that the Bible is a horrifically terrible thing to take an example from, right? I'm not here to defend that. If it steps on your toes, I'm sorry, but I'm not. Right? It is not intentional, but I don't care if it hurts your feelings that something is wrong. If you got your feelings hurt because I talked shit about Eliphas Levi all the way through because he was wrong all the way through his dogma and ritual. Or Cornelius Agrippa because he was wrong all the way through as far as we got of his book. Right? I'm not here to defend things that are wrong. I'm not here to justify this is wrong because, like, I will give my explanation, right? I have a whole video, it's almost an hour long, where I just discuss why the Bible is wrong, right? All of the various points that it is factually inconsistent or incorrect about. That's not a defense of the statement. Like, that is me just stating it as clearly as possible and letting the chips fall where they may. If you don't like me because I think that the Bible was written by people trying to control you and keep you from doing manifestation, fine, don't watch me. I'm not here for you. I'm here for the ones who want the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is, there's not a whole lot that is based upon Judaism that is going to be correct because Judaism is fundamentally flawed. And so it's not about the defense. It's about this is what is true, and this is why it is true. And I do lay out what antagonism I may encounter. I do say that other people may find this to be a certain way, and I don't apologize. Back to the text. He knows that an attempted vindication would, not merely on account of current defective thinking, but by virtue of a certain inner necessity, lead into the domain of artful persuasion, and he desires nothing else than to let the occult science work its own way quite independently. That is mostly true for me. We're going to talk about personal side of things, right? I stand alone, right, in most ways, right? I have several very unconventional beliefs that I talk about with some extreme detail. But my wife is not on board with me. My wife is a Christian, right? And I used to be. I am the one that changed. But I'm not trying to convince her to leave Christianity, even though I find all of the things bad, right? Anytime that there is blood sacrifice involved, it's a bad thing. It's simply that simple. And so For me, Judaism is fundamentally flawed, and anything based upon Judaism is going to be fundamentally flawed. But I'm not here to convince. I'm here to tell. I tell you that all of the time. That is one of my most common phrases, right? I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to tell you. I have done this. I have seen this. I have learned this. It's not about convincing you. It is merely relaying information. I'm not here to convince somebody else to act outside of their free will. I'm here to demonstrate the results that you get from acting according to the right way. Now, that is my right way. That is entirely within my judgments, right? So my right way and your right way may not entirely accord perfectly. That is fine. We have different paths to take, different lessons to learn. I'm not here to browbeat you into believing what I believe. I convey it, and then I go. I am an example, and then I am done. If you ask me about my beliefs, I will tell you plainly, openly, and honestly, and the reasons why. But if you don't ask me, you'll never learn it. Right? There are people that follow me on TikTok. I put up my inspirational videos every day, and I let you know that I am praying for you every single day. Most of the people who watch my TikToks assume that I am a Christian because of that. Why? Because I pray? Other people pray, but they assume that I am Christian because of that. I have never once said, I pray for you in Jesus' name. Not one time, ever. I have not stated that even roundabout way. I tell you that God loves you. That is not the same thing, right? God does love you. God doesn't need you to sacrifice a human to forgive you from sin. It is about being an example. It is not about making someone follow. And so this is absolutely true, right? I don't try to vindicate. I will explain if you are interested. But most people, they don't ever find out about my beliefs. I am just here doing the right thing consistently because that is what I want to do with my life. I want to make the correct decisions, and so I endeavor to do so. And it doesn't matter to me if you follow, right? If you want to follow what I do, that is perfectly fine. I am here to be an example. And if you don't want to, that is perfectly fine. I am just an example. Back to the text. The first point in occult science is by no means the advancing of assertions or opinions which are to be proven, but the communication in a purely narrative form of experiences which are to be met with in a world other than the one that is to be seen with physical eyes and touched with physical hands. And further, it is an important point that through this science the methods are described by which a man may verify for himself the truth of such communications. And again, that is something that I endeavor to do, right? In my book, I tried to be as clear and as concise as I possibly could. I didn't add in all of this fluff. There is a narrative portion to it. Chapter 0 is my history, right? It's not really relevant to the other things, so it didn't get an actual number. It is rather the possibility that I came out of, and so it is a 0. But it's my story, condensed, but how I got there. And then I tell you the steps, step by step by step by step by step, in a specific order so that it can be achieved in a specific way, but it is clear, right? It is not full of all of the fluff and the assumptions and what other people told me. It is purely experiential. It is something that I have experienced, that I am relaying, so that other people can verify for themselves. That is the stated goal, and that is the intrinsic goal. The whole point of doing this on the channel is to go through other people's experiences and filter, according to my experience, whether it is true or not. And to relay that to you so that you can try it. How many times have I told you? Even the things that I emphatically believe for myself remain in the realm of speculation up until other people have replicated it. If I put it out there and nobody else can do it, then it is speculative. But if I put it out there and then you can take the book and you can put it into action, that is fact. That is the goal, right? If I am proven wrong because nobody else can do it, fine. Fine, I will be corrected. That is kind of what I do. And so, again, I absolutely agree with this. For one who makes a serious study of genuine occult science will soon find that thereby much becomes changed in the conceptions and ideas which are formed, and rightly formed, in other spheres of life. A wholly new conception necessarily arises also about what has hitherto been called a proof. We will come to see that in certain domains such a word loses its usual meaning, and that there are other grounds for insight and understanding than proofs of this kind. All occult science is born from two thoughts, which may take root in any human being. To the occult scientist, these thoughts express facts, which may be experienced if the right methods for the purpose are used. But to many people, these same thoughts represent highly disputable assertions, which may arouse fierce contention, even if they are not regarded as something which may be proven impossible. These two thoughts are first, that behind the visible world there is another, the world invisible, which is hidden from the senses and also from thought that is fettered by these senses. And secondly, that it is possible for man to penetrate into that unseen world by developing certain faculties dormant within him. Some will say that there is no such hidden world. The world perceived by man through his senses is the only one. Its enigmas can be solved out of itself, even if man is still very far from being able to answer all of the questions of existence. The time will certainly come when sense experience and the science based upon it will be able to give the answers to all such questions. Now, we will hit the clarification here too. I do believe that there are unseen things. I do believe that there are entities that exist that we do not necessarily have the capacity to see. Now, a great deal of the occult relies upon visualization, and if you are unfamiliar with me, that is something I cannot do. I cannot close my eyes and willfully imagine a box, a blade of grass, a sheet of paper, a blank wall. I can't do any of that. I can, through the healing that I have done, for the first time in my life, 47 years into my life, I was able to visualize colors intentionally. That is as close to visualization that I've ever been in my entire life. I have done magical things, completely separated from the ability to see any invisible world. Now, I have had spiritual experiences in which I believe that I was pulled into this spiritual realm, even if I do not have direct access to see the things. Because I cannot fool myself, to me those visions have to be true because I didn't make them up. I don't even have, I very rarely even dream. It's just something that I don't have. Other people do. I don't. And I know somebody's like, yes, you do. I don't. I really don't. But, I don't know that I can answer all of the questions of experience. But I don't believe that there is an idealized world, right? I believe that there is eternity, but that is tied to this world because God has limited himself into the finite creation. And so existence for me is here in the finite. That doesn't mean that there are not hidden things or even hidden realms within our realm. I do not have access to any of them. There is no need for them in anything that I do. I do believe that there is other planes of existence. I believe there are at least 2, probably 3 beyond us. I have explained them in several other places, so I'm not going to do that today, but I do believe that there are these hidden realms, but it's not the idealized man in the idealized world, and then there's a reflection of that, and then there's us that is a reflection in the third part, right? That I don't believe. I do believe that there are hidden things from us, but they are here. We just can't see them, just like we can't see oxygen, right? We can't see an oxygen element. We can't. We can see water when it combines with hydrogen in sufficient amounts. We cannot see the element by itself. It is hidden from us. That does not mean we can never see it. It just means that it is hidden now. But it is still here. And so to me, the hidden world is here, not some metaphysical third realm far away. And that is an important distinction for me, right? We are dealing with here. We're not dealing with afterlife. We're not dealing with some future place. We're dealing with now. Back to the text. Others say that it cannot be asserted that there is no unseen world behind the visible one, but that human powers of perception are not able to penetrate into that world. Those powers have bounds which they cannot pass. Faith, with its urgent cravings, may take refuge in such a world, but true science based upon ascertained facts can have nothing to do with it. A third class looks upon it as a kind of presumption for man to attempt to penetrate by his own efforts of cognition into a domain with regard to which he should give up all claim to knowledge and be content with faith. The adherents of this view felt it be wrong for weak human beings to wish to force their way into a world which should belong to a religious life. Religion is just ceremonies. It is also alleged that a common knowledge of the facts of the sense world is possible for mankind, but that in regard to supersensible things it can be merely a question of the individual's personal opinion, and that in these matters there can be no possibility of a certain universally recognized. And many other assertions are made on the subject. The occult scientist has convinced himself that a consideration of the visible world propounds enigmas to man which can never be solved out of the facts of that world itself. Their solution in this way will never be possible, however far advanced a knowledge of those facts may be. For visible facts plainly point, through their own inner nature, to the existence of a hidden world, where one who does not see this closes his eyes to the problems which obviously spring up everywhere out of the facts of the superworld, of the sense world. He refuses to recognize certain questions and problems, and therefore thinks that all questions can be answered through facts within reach of sense perception. The questions which he is willing to ask are all capable of being answered by the facts which he is convinced will be discovered in the course of time. Even genuine occultist admits this. But why should one, when he asks no questions, expect answers on certain subjects? The occult scientist says that to him such questioning is natural and must be regarded as a wholly justifiable expression of the human soul. Science is surely not to be confined within the limits which prohibit impartial inquiry. The opinion that there are bounds to human knowledge which it is impossible to pass, compelling man to stop short of the invisible world, is thus met by the occult scientist. He says that there can exist no doubt concerning the impossibility of penetrating into the unseen world by means of the kind of cognition here meant. One who considers it the only kind can come to no other opinion than that man is not permitted to penetrate into a possibly existing higher world. But the occult scientist goes on to say that it is possible to develop a different sort of cognition, and that this leads to the unseen world. If this kind of cognition is held to be impossible, we arrive at a point of view from which any mention of an invisible world appears as sheer nonsense. But to an unbiased judgment, there can be no basis for such an opinion as this, except that its adherent is a stranger to that other kind of cognition. But how can a person form an opinion about a subject of which he declares himself ignorant? Occult science must in this case maintain the principle that people should speak only of what they know, and should not make assertions about anything which they are ignorant. It can only recognize every man's right to communicate his own experiences, not every man's right to declare the impossibility of what he does not know or will not know. The occult scientist disputes no one's right to ignore the invisible world, but there can be no real reason why a person should declare himself an authority, not only on what he may know, but also on things considered unknowable. To those who say that it is a presumption to penetrate into unseen regions, the occult scientist would merely point out that this can be done, and that it is sinning against the faculties with which man has been endowed if he allows them to waste instead of developing and using them. This is the point that I hold. You have free will, you have the ability to choose, but to me it seems sacrilegious to not, right? I believe that the control systems, which are religion and government and all of those things, all of the clubs, I believe that they were put into place to keep you from realizing that you can manifest, to keep us in this lack mentality, to keep us on this prison planet mentality, and none of those things are true, right? There is abundance. It is available. You have the ability to manifest. That is a real thing. But he who thinks that the views about the unseen world are necessarily wholly dependent on personal opinion and feeling is denying the common essence of all human beings. Even though it is true that everyone must find light in these things within himself, it is also a fact that all those who go far enough arrive at the same, not at different conclusions regarding them. Differences exist only as long as people will not approach the highest truths by the well-tested path of occult science, but attempt ways of their own choosing. Now, I have went away that is completely separate, right? I read some books. I had some knowledge. It was not great. It was not extensive, even though I thought that it was. Most of what I do, the results that I have been from divine inspiration. Now, I believe that divine revelation is inspiration, that it is the intuitive gift to mankind to be able to discern. And if you have the correct inputs, you should be able to get the correct outputs. I am doing something that is completely different. And I say that emphatically because we have been looking for evidence of anyone doing it the same way, and I have not found that at all. I've found plenty of ceremonies, none of which I have done. I have found plenty of rituals, none of which I have participated in. I have found people using tools, crystals, wands, athames, blood, none of which I partake in. I do have tools, right? This is sage right here. I use that to burn. I got a mortar and pestle for grinding up incense, right? I use tools. The tools have no power. Other people put power in the tools. We saw that all the way through Aliphus Levi, and that was terrible. And so I am on a not well-tested path. I am laying out a path that I am hoping other people test, but it has not been well-tested. It is definitely different from anything else that I have read. I have not found a single person with the same path. And this cannot be stated enough, and I have results, right? I have healed my throat. I am on hour 5 of talking today. Right now. When I began this channel, it was 15 minutes, and then I had to rest for a couple hours to do another 15 minutes. Right now, I am 5 hours into talking, and I'm good. Like, my voice is definitely on the back end, right? I'm definitely a little bit worn out, but it's working. I can actually talk. I can still talk. I can still talk after 5 hours. That is one of my proofs. I had a cyst. I healed my cyst. Now, it is through the electromagnetic manipulation of the forces of creation, which is the Holy Spirit. It was not outside of the will of God. It was completely within. He showed me how to do it. I asked for healing. I got showed how to do it. That has worked for my throat. It has worked for my shoulder. It has worked for my back. I did it. Today is the 28th. Y'all will see this on the 29th, but today is the 3-month mark. 3 months ago today, my leg was broken. Today, I walked a mile. Now, 1 mile by itself, right? I have been walking about half a mile for a week with no cane. Today, I did a whole mile on the 3-month anniversary on purpose, and I probably could have done a little bit more, but I didn't want to get stuck out. I am healing. I am healing in very real ways, well above the expected curve. Most people right here where I'm at, having the surgery that I just have, are just now getting to the point where they're letting the cane go. I've been off of the cane for over 3 weeks. So when I say that my path works, I'm not talking idly. I am talking from experience. This is something that I have put into effect, and I do have results from. All right. Genuine occult science will certainly fully admit that only one who has followed or at any rate has begun to follow the path of occult science, is in a position to recognize it as the right one. That is true. If you're not on the path, you won't recognize it as the path. But all those who follow that path will recognize its genuineness, and have always done so. The path to occult knowledge will be found at the fitting moment by every human being who discerns in what is visible the presence of something invisible, or who even but dimly surmises or divines it, and who, from his consciousness that powers of cognition are capable of development, is driven to the feeling that what is hidden may be unveiled to him. One who is drawn to occult science by such experiences of the soul will find opening up before him not only the prospect of finding the answers to certain questions which press upon him, but the further prospect of overcoming everything which hampers and enfeebles his life. And in a certain higher sense it implies a weakening of life, in fact, a death of the soul, when a person is compelled to turn away from or deny the unseen. Indeed, under certain circumstances, despair is the result of man's losing all hope of having the invisible revealed to him. Well, yeah, seeing as how hope and despair are the two coins governed by the crown, right? And so, yeah. Like literally, if you cut off communication from the divine, you're going to feel despair. Absolutely. This death and despair, in their manifold forms, are at the same time inner spiritual foes of occult science. They make their appearance when the person's inner force is dwindling away. In that case, if he was to possess any vital force, it must be supplied to him from without. He perceives things, beings, and events which approach his organs of sense and analyzes them with his intellect. They afford him pleasure and pain and impel him to the actions of which he is capable. For a while he may go in this way, but at length he must reach a point at which he inwardly dies. For that which may thus be extracted from man from the outer world becomes exhausted. This is not a statement arising from the personal experience of one individual, but something resulting from an impartial survey of the whole of human life. That which secures life from exhaustion lies in the unseen world, deep at the roots of things. If a person loses the power of descending into those depths so that he cannot be perpetually drawing fresh vitality from them, then in the end the outer world of things also ceases to yield him anything of a vivifying nature. It is by no means the case that only the individual and his personal weal and woe are concerned, though through occult science man gains the conviction that from a higher standpoint the weal and woe of the individual are intimately bound up with the weal and woe of the whole world. This is a means by which man comes to see that he is inflicting an injury on the entire world and every being within it if he does not develop his own powers in the right way. If a man makes his life desolate by losing touch with the unseen, he not only destroys his inner self something, the decay of which may eventually drive him to despair, but through his weakness he constitutes a hindrance to the evolution of the whole world in which he lives. Now, man may delude himself. He may yield to the belief that there is nothing invisible, and that which is manifest to his senses and intellect contains everything which can possibly exist. But such an illusion is only possible on the surface of consciousness and not in its depths. Feeling and desire do not yield to this delusive belief. They will be perpetually craving, in one way or another, for that which is invisible. And if this is withheld, they drive man to doubt, to uncertainty about life, and even to despair. Occult science, by making manifest what is unseen, is calculated to overcome all hopelessness, uncertainty, and despair. Everything, in short, which weakens life and makes it unfit for its necessary service in the universe. The beneficent effect of occult science is that it not only satisfies thirst for knowledge, but gives strength and stability to life. The source whence the occultist occult scientist draws his power for work and confidence in life is inexhaustible. Anyone who has once had recourse to that fount will always, on revisiting it, go forth with renewed vigor. That is true. There are people who will not hear anything about occult science because they think they discern something unhealthy in what has just been said. These people are quite right as regards the surface and outer aspect of life. They do not desire that to be stunted, which life, in its so-called reality, offers. They see weakness in man turning away from reality and seeking his welfare in an unseen world, which to them is synonymous with what is chimerical and visionary. If, as occult scientists, we do not desire to fall into morbid dreaming and weakness, we must admit that such objections are partially justified, for they are founded upon sound judgment, which leads to a half-truth instead of a whole truth, merely because it does not penetrate to the root of things, but remains on the surface. If occult science were calculated to weaken life and estrange man from true reality, such objections would certainly be strong enough to cut the ground from under the feet of those who follow the spiritual line of life. But even in regard to such opinions as these, occult science would not be taking the right course in defending itself in the ordinary sense of the word. Even in this case, it can only speak by means of what it gives to those who really penetrate into its meaning, that is, by the real force and vitality which it bestows. It does not weaken life, but strengthens it, because it equips man not only with the forces of the manifest world, but with those of the invisible world, of which the manifest is the effect. Thus, it does not imply an impoverishment, but an enrichment of life. The true occult scientist does not stand aloof from the world, but is a lover of reality, because he does not desire to enjoy the unseen in a remote dream world, but finds his happiness in bringing to the world ever fresh supplies of force from the invisible sources from which this very world is derived, and from which it must so be continually fructified. I've made the statement before that once you find the truth, you don't return to the lie. And this is so much a truth that when people found it, they were willing to risk their lives to keep it. That's not the case today, right? I am out here publicly stating beliefs that just 200 years ago would have gotten me at least shunned by society. I would have been turned completely out. Nobody would have paid any attention to me. 100 years before that, they would have tied me to a stick and caught me on fire. Right? And so there was a very real threat that if you were pursuing this path of higher enlightenment, it would lead to a physical death. And people still did it. They did it to the point where they created these societies, these secret clubs, where they had all of these initiations so that they could ensure that you would be safe to reveal secrets to. That wasn't them trying to find a falsehood, right? That wasn't them standing in pain of torturous death behind a lie. This was a truth found, and it may not have been the whole truth, but it was at least a search for the truth. It was a discovery of a path, and that path was so worthy that they were willing to invest their lives into it. All of their investment of personal gains went into this service. All of their emotional content went into this, and they had to hide it from the normal populace. That is a path, and it may not have been a full path. It may not have been a complete path, but it damn sure was not a fake path, right? There was at least enough to convince intelligent men. Like the people who will join the Rosicrucians and the Masons, they're not the dregs of society. Right? One of the requirements for Masonry is that you have to be able to support yourself. That is one of the requirements. If you cannot work a job and support yourself, you can't be a Mason, right? At least if they still hold to the same rules. And so it's not the dregs of society, right? This isn't the people who are just the outcast. These were leaders. These were people in positions of authority. And they had found something. Something that they were willing to die to keep secret. Because people were willing to kill them if they made it public. And that is a consideration that you need to make. If you have not decided either way about the magical path, you have the ability to decide. If you are just curious and you somehow managed upon my videos, you found a good resource. There are a lot of things that you're going to have to discover about yourself, right? Shadow work is not merely just saying that something happened in the past. It is going back and spending a good deal of time working on it, and that is going to lead you into manifestation. All of those things were part of the ceremonies back in the day, and then they forgot what the ceremonies were about. And that's the problem with the clubs, right? We saw from a couple of the studies that the Masons do ceremonial magic and they do not believe in ceremonial magic. That's dumb. Because once upon a time when those ceremonies were instituted, the people who did them did believe. Back to the text. Some people find many obstacles when they enter upon the path of occult science. One of these expressed is the fact that a person attempting to take the first steps is sometimes discouraged because at the outset he is introduced to the details of the supersensible world, in order that he may, with entire patience and devotion, become acquainted with them. A series of communications is made to him concerning the invisible nature of man, about certain definite occurrences in the kingdom of which death opens the portals, and regarding the evolutions of man, the earth, and the entire solar system. What he expected was to enter this supersensible world easily, at a bound. Now he is heard to say, "Everything which I am told to study is food for my mind, but leaves my soul cold. I am seeking the deepening of my soul life. I want to find myself within. I am seeking something that will lift my soul to the sphere of the divine, leading to its true home. I do not want information about the human being and world processes." People who talk in this way have no idea that by such feelings they are barring the door to what they are really seeking. For it is just when, and only when, with a free and open mind, in self-surrender and patience, they assimilate what they call merely food for the intellect, and they will find that for which their souls are athirst. That road leads the soul to union with the divine, which brings to the soul knowledge of the works of the divine. The uplifting of the heart is the result of learning to know about the creations of the spirit. On this account, occult science must begin by imparting the information which throws light on the realms of the spiritual world. So too, in this book, we shall begin with what can be unveiled concerning unseen worlds through the methods of occult research. That which is mortal in man and that which is immortal will be described in their connection with the world of which he is a member. Then will follow a description of the methods by which man is able to develop these powers of cognition latent within him, which will lead him into that world. As much will be said about the methods as is at present possible in a work of this kind. It seems natural to think that these methods should be dealt with first, for it seems that as though the main point would be to acquaint man with what may bring him, by means of his own powers, to the desired view of the higher world. Many will say, "Of what use is it for me that others tell me what they know about higher worlds? I wish to see them for myself." There is a reason, like my book has 9 chapters, but it's 8 because I started with 0, right? Intentionally on purpose. You don't get any actual instructional magical things until chapter 6, and then 7 is a clarification on some advanced practices, and then 8 is some warnings, right? The first 5 chapters are dedicated to you improving yourself without any of the magical things. And that is entirely on purpose, and it is for this, right? If you are coming just for magic, you are going to be disappointed. If you are coming to improve yourself and thereby release the magic, you will find what you are seeking. The fact of the matter is that it is for really fruitful experience of the mysteries of the unseen world. Previous knowledge of certain facts belonging to that world is absolutely necessary. Why this is so will be sufficiently brought out from what follows. It is a mistake to think that the truths of occult science, which are imparted by those qualified to communicate them, we'll pause on that for a second, before mention is made of the means of penetrating into the spiritual world itself, can be understood and grasped only by the means of the higher vision, which results from developing certain powers latent in man. This is not the case. For investigating and discovering the mysteries of a supersensible world, that higher sight is essential. No one is able to discover the facts of the unseen world without the clairvoyance, which is synonymous with that higher vision. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, Mr. Steiner, even though you're not around. Yes, they can. I say that so emphatically because it is me, right? I have, quite literally, put into play the things of the unseen world. I have healed myself through the manipulation of the magnetics, and I do not have clairvoyance or the higher vision. Neither one. I cannot visualize. Now, have I had a vision? Yes. Was it me in control? No. I have had what I consider to be spiritual visions, right? I've had an angelic visitation. I have been pulled out of my body in a spiritual experience. Both of those are relayed elsewhere. I'm not going to get into details here, but they are available. And there was no visualization of myself involved at all. Not a single bit. I am not capable of doing so. And so, it is not essential. You do not have to have it. I do it by feel. I quite literally feel the energies. I don't visualize them moving. I quite literally push them with my muscles. It is isometrics. That is how I do it. It is not visions. It is not. And so this statement, while he may very well believe it, is simply not true. When, however, the facts have been discovered and imparted, everyone who applies to them the full range of his ordinary intellect and unprejudiced powers of judgment will be able to understand them and to rise to a higher degree of conviction concerning them. One who maintains that the mysteries are incomprehensible to him does not do so because he is not yet clairvoyant, but because he has not yet succeeded in bringing into activity those powers of cognition which may be possessed by everyone, even without clairvoyance. Cognition is understanding. Right? I do have cognition. I do have understanding. I just don't have clairvoyance at all. I cannot see anything in the future. At all. And don't claim to, right? I have several things that I believe will happen. I've got the 12,000 year disaster cycle. I went on record with that. It is speculation, right? It is not clairvoyance. I didn't have a vision of this happening. It is by reason and logic, science. A new method of putting forward these matters consists in so describing them after they have been clairvoyantly investigated, that they are quite accessible to the faculty of judgment. If only people do not shut themselves off by prejudice, there is no obstacle to arriving at a conviction, even without higher vision. It is true that many will find that the new method of presentiment, as given in this book, is far from corresponding to their customary ways of forming an opinion. But any objection due to this will soon disappear if one takes the trouble to follow out these customary methods to their final consequences. When, by an extended application of ordinary thought, a certain number of the higher mysteries have been assimilated and found intelligible by anyone, then the right moment has come for the methods of occult research to be applied to his individual personality. These will give him access to the unseen world. Nor will any genuine scientist be able to find contradiction in spirit and in truth between his science, which is built upon the facts of the sense world, and the way in which occult science carries on its researches. The scientist uses certain instruments and methods, He constructs his instruments by working upon what nature gives him. Occult science also uses an instrument, but in this case, the instrument is man himself, and that instrument too must first be prepared for that higher research. The faculties and powers given to man by nature at the outset without his cooperation must be transformed into higher ones. In this way, man is able to make himself into an instrument for the investigation of the unseen world. And that is going to bring us to an end of, what is this one called? The Character of Occult Science. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I understand I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It's not intentional, but it's not something I apologize for. We are here to discern truth. So far, Mr. Steiner has been one of the more reliable resources. That's why I fell back to him. From what he has stated so far, I'm hoping that there is some actual meat in this book, right? We've had plenty of milk. We've had too much water. Now I'm ready for some meat. And if this doesn't give the meat, I don't know where we're going to go. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that was stated, put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you have another work you would like to see me read or discuss, drop that in the box as well. I'll add it to the list. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of my book where I do teach you to do magic responsibly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.